She had one day to marry or lose everything. I said yes under one condition. She set the folder on my kitchen table without asking if she could sit down. I'd known her face from the feed store, maybe the post office. We'd never spoken more than passing words. She was the kind of woman who kept her own counsel. Late 50s, I guessed, composed in a way that looked like it cost her something. "I need to ask you something that's going to sound impossible," she said. I didn't answer right away. I was still holding the dish towel from drying my lunch plate. "I have 24 hours to marry someone," she continued, "legally, or I lose the land my family has protected for 4 generations. The way she said it wasn't desperate. It was factual, like she was reading terms from a contract she didn't write. "I'm not asking you to love me," she added. "I'm asking you to help me keep what's mine." I looked at the folder, then at her hands. No ring, no trembling. "If I say yes," I told her, "you don't just sign papers and leave. You stay. You live under my roof. You follow my terms, until I know this is legitimate." She met my eyes. "How long?" "As long as it takes," I said. She didn't flinch. "Then I accept." I set down the dish towel, looked at her sitting there at my table, at the way her hands rested on that folder like it contained everything that mattered. And I wondered if saying yes would save what she was trying to protect, or if it would just be 2 people pretending until the weight of it broke one of us. I live on 40 acres that belonged to my grandfather. It's not much by modern standards. The house is simple. White paint that needs attention every few years. A porch that catches the morning sun and holds the warmth well into the evening. I keep horses, 3 of them, 2 mares and a gelding, a few head of cattle that graze the back pasture, and a garden that does better some years than others depending on the rain and my attention to it. The property sits at the end of a gravel road that most people forget exists. There's an oak tree near the front gate that's older than the house. My grandfather planted fence posts around it when he was young. Now the tree has swallowed some of them, the wood visible in the bark like old scars. I'm 61. I was married once, a long time ago. It didn't last. Since then, I've learned to prefer the quiet. I'm not lonely, I'm careful. I've built a life that makes sense to me. I wake when the sun comes up. I work until my body tells me to stop. I read in the evenings. I go to bed when I'm tired. It's a simple rhythm, and I've learned not to question it. When she arrived that afternoon, I was replacing a fence post near the road. The old one had rotted through at the base. Happens with cedar if you don't treat it right. I had the post hole digger in my hands, working the clay soil when I heard the car. I saw it first, an older sedan, clean but worn at the edges. The kind of car someone keeps running because they know how to take care of things. She parked near the gate and got out slowly, like she was giving herself time to reconsider whatever had brought her here. I recognized her immediately. Catherine Brennan. I'd seen her at the hardware store, usually buying things like wood stain or garden supplies, at the library on Saturday mornings, at the occasional community meeting where she sat in the back and never spoke unless someone asked her a direct question. She had a reputation for being private, polite but distant, the kind of person who didn't need anything from anyone. She was the type of woman people respected but didn't know. I'd heard she'd been married once, that it ended badly, that she lived alone on her family's land west of town. But those were just fragments, the kind of information you collect living in a small place without ever intending to. So when she walked toward me carrying that folder, her steps careful on the uneven ground, I knew something had broken in her world. People like Catherine Brennan don't show up unannounced unless they've run out of other options. "Mr. Hollis," she said, "Ma'am, I need to speak with you. It's urgent, and it's going to sound strange." I set down the post driver. "All right." "Not out here," she said, glancing at the road. "Inside, if you don't mind." I led her to the house. The screen door creaked the way it always does. I keep meaning to oil the hinges. Inside, the kitchen was as I'd left it. Breakfast dishes drying in the rack, a coffee cup on the counter. the kind of ordinary disorder that comes from living alone. She didn't comment on the interior. Didn't look around the way visitors usually do, taking inventory of someone else's life. She moved to the table and waited until I gestured to the chair. That's when she opened the folder. The documents were organized, everything in order. Maps, legal papers, photographs. She'd prepared for this conversation. "This is my family's land," she said, sliding a map toward me. Her finger traced a boundary line. 320 acres, 12 miles west of here. It's been in the Brennan family since 1889. My great-grandfather built the original house with lumber he milled himself. My father expanded it in the 50s, added a porch, a second story. My mother died in the bedroom upstairs. I studied the map. I knew the area. Good soil, access to water, the kind of property that doesn't come up for sale often because families hold on to it. "I inherited it when my father passed 4 years ago," she continued. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the effort it took. "But there was a condition in the will I didn't fully understand at the time. My father was particular about certain things." She placed another document on top of the map. Legal language, dense and formal. The kind of writing designed to be precise and unforgiving. My father believed land should stay in families. He was old-fashioned that way. He'd seen too many properties subdivided, sold off, turned into things that didn't respect what they'd been. So he created a clause. She tapped the document. "If I'm not legally married by my 58th birthday, the property transfers to a distant cousin, someone I've never met, someone who's already been contacted by a development company." I read the relevant section. The language was clear. No ambiguity. "When's your birthday?" I asked. "Tomorrow." The word hung in the air between us. "You're telling me you have 24 hours. "Yes." "And you came to me." "I did." I set down the document, looked at her directly. "Why?" She didn't hesitate. The answer was ready. "Because you're known to be fair. Because you own land and understand what it means. Because you're not married and you're not looking to be. Because I think you might be the kind of man who'd understand that this is about preservation, not romance." It was a good answer, honest, direct. "You want a marriage on paper," I said. "Yes." "To satisfy a legal requirement." "Exactly." "And after that?" She folded her hands on the table. "After that, I don't know. I haven't thought past tomorrow. I've spent the last 3 months trying to find another way. I hired a lawyer. He said the will was airtight. I looked into contesting it. Too expensive, too uncertain. I tried to find someone else, someone I knew better. But every man I approached either wanted something I wasn't willing to give, or didn't take me seriously. And you think I will? I'm hoping you will." I stood, walked to the sink, poured 2 glasses of water from the tap. The pipes hummed the way they do. I set one glass in front of her, kept the other. "What happens if you lose it?" I asked. She lifted the glass but didn't drink yet. "They'll clear-cut the woods. The timber alone is worth $500,000 to the right buyer. They'll subdivide the pastures, survey the land into 5-acre lots. They'll turn it into executive estates for people from the city who want to feel rural without actually being rural." Her voice didn't rise, but something tightened in her expression, a hardness around the eyes. "My father's grave is on that land. So is my mother's. There's a small cemetery, just family, under a stand of hickory trees. My daughter used to play there when she was small. She had a favorite doll, this ridiculous thing with yellow hair. When she was 6, she insisted we bury it next to my mother's headstone because she wanted Grandma to have company." She stopped, took a breath. "I dug it up a few years later when my daughter asked for it back. We reburied it together. She's 32 now, lives in Oregon, works for some tech company. We don't talk much, but that doll is still there. And if I lose this land, someone's going to bulldoze it without ever knowing what they destroyed." I drank my water, set down the glass. "I'm not asking you to save me," she said quietly. "I'm asking you to help me keep what should never have been in question. I know it's strange. I know it's asking a lot, but I'm out of options and out of time." I studied her face. There was no manipulation in it, no performance, just a woman who'd exhausted every other possibility and found herself at a stranger's table because she had nowhere else to go. "If I agree to this," I said slowly, "it's not just signing a paper. You don't walk out of the courthouse and disappear. You stay here. You live in this house. You follow the rules I set, until I'm convinced this is legitimate and not some scheme I don't understand yet." She looked at me for a long moment. "Why?" "Because I don't know you. Because I've lived long enough to know that people are capable of things you don't expect. And because if I'm going to put my name on a legal document, I need to know I'm not being used." "Fair," she said. "How long would I have to stay?" "As long as it takes for me to trust what you've told me." "And if you never do?" "Then you made a bad choice asking me." She lifted the glass, drank, set it down carefully, centering it on the table. "I accept your terms." We drove to town that evening in my truck. She sat in the passenger seat with the folder on her lap, her hands resting on top of it like she was afraid it might blow away. Neither of us spoke much. The radio was off, just the sound of tires on asphalt and the occasional rattle from the glove box. Through the window, fields passed in the dimming light, corn stubble, fence posts, a barn with paint peeling in long strips. I didn't know what she was thinking. I was thinking about whether I'd just agreed to something I'd regret, whether this woman sitting next to me was exactly who she appeared to be, or whether I'd missed something important. The county clerk's office was closing in 20 minutes. I'd called ahead from the house, told them we were coming. The clerk, a woman named Marjorie who'd worked there for 30 years and knew everyone's business, looked at us with the kind of expression that said she'd seen stranger things, but not many. The office smelled like old paper and floor wax. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. There were filing cabinets along one wall, a desk with a computer that looked 10 years out of date, and a flag in the corner that needed ironing. "You both understand this is legally binding," Marjorie said. She'd put on reading glasses and was reviewing the forms we needed. "We do," I answered. "And you're entering into this marriage of your own free will. No coercion, no duress." Catherine nodded. "Yes." "No one's forcing you," Marjorie added, looking at Catherine specifically. "No one's forcing me." Marjorie handed us the forms. We filled them out in silence at a small table near the window. I watched Catherine's handwriting as she worked through the questions. Neat, controlled, the pen didn't waver. She filled in her name, her address, her birth date. When she got to previous marriages, she paused for just a second, then wrote the number 1. I filled in my own forms. The questions were straightforward, clinical. They reduced marriage to data points. When we signed, Marjorie witnessed. She stamped the certificate with a heavy thud that felt more final than I'd expected. The sound echoed in the quiet office. "Congratulations," she said, though her tone suggested she wasn't sure that was the right word. "You're legally married." She handed us the certificate. Catherine took it carefully, like it might tear. "Thank you," she said. Marjorie was already putting away the forms. "You two take care now." In the truck on the way back, Catherine finally spoke. "Thank you," she said again. "Don't thank me yet," I said. "You haven't lived with me." "What are your rules?" I'd been thinking about this since she'd agreed. "You sleep in the guest room. You don't go through my things. You contribute to the household, cooking, cleaning, whatever needs doing. You don't bring strangers here without telling me first. You don't lie to me. If you need to leave the property, you tell me where you're going and when you'll be back." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "That sounds like a prison." "It sounds like accountability," I said. "You asked me to trust you with something serious. I'm asking the same. I need to know you're not going to disappear. I need to know this is real." She looked out the window at the passing fields. "Fair enough." When we got back to the house, the sun was setting. The light was golden and low, stretching shadows across the yard. I showed her the guest room. It was plain. A bed with an iron frame, a dresser with a mirror, a window that looked out over the pasture where the horses grazed. I'd put clean sheets on that morning, though I wasn't sure why I'd thought to do it. "Bathroom's across the hall," I said. "Towels are in the closet. Hot water takes a minute to come through, so run it before you get in." "Thank you." "Breakfast is at 6. If you're not up by then, you make your own." She nodded. "There's coffee in the kitchen. Help yourself." "Okay." I stood in the doorway, suddenly aware that I didn't know what else to say. This woman was now my wife, legally, but she was also a stranger. "Get some rest," I said finally. "You too." I closed the door and went to my own room. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept thinking about the way she'd said I accept your terms without hesitation, like she'd already calculated the cost and decided it was worth it. I wondered what kind of strength it took to ask a stranger for help, to show up at someone's door with an impossible request and wait for an answer that might never come. And I wondered if I'd made the right choice, saying yes. The first week was awkward in the way that cohabitation with a stranger always is. We moved around each other carefully, like dancers learning a new routine. She woke before 6 every morning. I'd come downstairs and find her already in the kitchen, coffee already made, eggs or oatmeal started on the stove. She didn't wait for instruction. She just did what needed doing. The first morning, I'd been surprised. The second morning, I'd felt vaguely guilty, like I should have been up first. By the third morning, I'd accepted it. This was her way of contributing, of proving something, maybe to me, maybe to herself. She cleaned without fuss. She'd do the dishes after meals, wipe down the counters, sweep the floor. She folded laundry with the kind of precision that suggested she'd spent years doing it for people who didn't notice or appreciate the work. She asked where things went, where I kept the dish soap, where the extra blankets were stored, and she remembered the answers. In the evenings, we ate dinner together, not because either of us suggested it, but because it seemed strange not to. The meals were simple: roast chicken, pork chops, vegetables from the garden. She was a better cook than I was, but she didn't make a show of it, just prepared food that was good and filling. We talked, but not about anything personal. Weather, fence repairs, whether the mare was favoring her left foreleg. The kind of conversation you'd have with a hired hand, except she wasn't hired and I wasn't paying her. Sometimes the silences stretched long. Not uncomfortable exactly, just present. The sound of forks on plates, the ticking of the clock on the wall, her hand reaching for the salt, my glass being set down. Small movements that marked the passing of time without needing words to fill it. One evening, maybe 5 days in, I noticed she'd reorganized the pantry. Everything lined up, labels facing out, older items moved to the front. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "I know." "But thank you." She nodded, didn't elaborate. The next afternoon, a woman knocked on the door. I was upstairs when I heard it. By the time I came down, Catherine had already answered. The woman was holding a casserole dish covered with foil. Mid-60s, gray hair pulled back, the kind of face that meant well but didn't know when to stop meaning it. "I'm Eleanor Patterson," she said, "from the church council. We heard about your marriage." "That's kind of you," Catherine said. She didn't reach for the casserole. "It's just, well, we wanted to make sure you're settling in all right. It was all so sudden." Eleanor's eyes moved past Catherine, taking in what she could see of the house. "You know, if you ever need someone to talk to, woman to woman, sometimes these situations can be complicated." "I appreciate that," Catherine said. Her voice was even. "And we haven't seen you at services yet. We'd love to have you both join us Sunday. It's a good way for people to get to know you, as a couple." The emphasis was slight but deliberate. "We'll think about it," Catherine said. Eleanor handed her the casserole. "It's chicken and rice. You just heat it at 350 for 20 minutes. She paused at the door. "You take care now. And remember, my number's in the church directory if you need anything at all." After she left, Catherine set the casserole on the counter, stood there looking at it. "You don't have to go," I said from the doorway. "To church? To any of it. If you want to leave, you can leave." She was quiet for a moment. Then she turned to look at me. "She thinks you're keeping me here." "I know. And now everyone at that church will think the same thing. They'll be watching, waiting to see if I show up asking for help." "Probably." She picked up the casserole, put it in the refrigerator. "If I leave now," she said quietly, "they'll say you drove me away. If I stay, they'll say I'm trapped. Either way, people have already decided what this is." She closed the refrigerator door, didn't look at me. "I'm going to stay," she said, "but not because I have to." On the 8th day, I asked her about the land. We were finishing dinner, pot roast with potatoes and carrots. She'd made it the way my grandmother used to, slow-cooked until everything was tender. "Tell me about it," I said. "The place you're trying to keep." She set down her fork, looked at me like she was deciding how much to share. "What do you want to know?" "Why it matters." She was quiet for a moment. Then she began. "The house sits on a rise," she said. "You can see 3 counties from the porch on a clear day. There's a creek that runs year-round. Even in drought years, it never fully dries up. My father used to take me fishing there when I was small. We'd catch nothing most days, but that wasn't the point." "What was the point?" "Being still," she said. "Learning to wait. Learning that some things can't be rushed." She described the woods, the way light came through the hickory trees in September, golden and soft. The deer that bedded down near the old stone wall her great-grandfather had built stone by stone. The field where her mother planted sunflowers every spring, just because they made her happy. "I was married once," she said. "For 18 years. We had a daughter. She's grown now, lives in Oregon. A software engineer. We don't talk much." "Why not?" She picked up her water glass, turned it in her hands. "Because I stayed too long in a marriage that was hurting me, and she watched it happen. She begged me to leave. I told her it was complicated, that marriage was work, that you don't just walk away." "But you did eventually." "Eventually," she echoed, "after 18 years, after my daughter had already moved across the country to get away from watching me destroy myself. She thinks I'm weak. Maybe she's right." I didn't respond to that. I didn't know her well enough to contradict her or agree. "When my husband left," she continued, "I went back to the land. My father let me live there while he was still alive. He never said I told you so, but I knew he'd been right about everything. After he died, I stayed. I thought I'd be there until I died too. I didn't think anyone could take it. Didn't think about the clause in the will until the lawyer called and told me I had 3 months. And you spent those 3 months trying to find another way." "Yes. I looked at every option, tried everything I could think of, and then time ran out, and I had to make a choice." "You chose to ask me." "I did." "Why me specifically? You said I'm fair, but there are other fair men around." She met my eyes. "Because everyone else would have wanted something more, or they would have thought I was crazy, or they would have said yes and then used it against me later. You seemed like someone who'd do what you said you'd do. Nothing more, nothing less." It was maybe the most honest thing anyone had said to me in years. If something in this story feels familiar to you, about making choices that don't have easy names, you might want to stay with it. The next morning, she asked if she could help with the horses. I was surprised. Most people are nervous around horses if they don't have experience. "You know how to handle them?" I asked. "We had horses when I was growing up, before my father had to sell them." I told her they needed grooming. She worked quietly, brushing out the mare's coat with the same careful attention she gave everything else. Long, even strokes, checking for burrs in the mane. The mare, who was usually skittish with strangers, stood still for her, turned her head once to sniff Catherine's shoulder, then went back to being calm. "You've done this before," I said. "My father taught me. He said if you're going to keep animals, you owe them your time." Over the following days, I watched her move through the routines of the property. She didn't ask for permission anymore. She just saw what needed doing and did it. She fixed a loose hinge on the barn door with a screwdriver she found in the toolbox. She weeded the garden, pulling up the creeping Charlie that was strangling the tomatoes. She patched a hole in the chicken wire where a fox had been trying to get in. She was competent, quiet, present. One evening, maybe 2 weeks in, I found her sitting on the porch steps, watching the sunset. The sky was streaked with orange and pink. The horses were silhouettes in the pasture. She had her arms wrapped around her knees, chin resting on them. I sat down a few feet away. Not close, just near enough to share the space. The wood was still warm from the day's sun. A cicada started up somewhere in the oak tree. "You don't have to stay outside," I said. "I like it out here." "So do I." We sat in silence. After a while, she spoke. "Do you regret saying yes?" I thought about it, about the way the house felt different now. Not worse, just different, like it had remembered it was meant to hold more than one person. "No," I said. "Do you believe me yet?" "I'm starting to." She nodded, didn't push further, didn't ask what it would take for me to fully trust her. That night I realized something had shifted. The house didn't feel like it was divided anymore. It felt like two people were living in it. Not as strangers, not as lovers, as something else. Something I didn't have a word for yet. Partners, maybe, in a way that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with mutual respect. 3 weeks after we married, a man showed up at the gate. I was in the barn when I heard the car. Catherine was in the garden, staking tomato plants that had grown tall enough to need support. She saw him first. By the time I walked out, wiping grease from my hands with a rag, he was standing near the fence holding a briefcase. He was younger than me, maybe 45, wearing a suit that was too nice for a Tuesday afternoon in the country. His shoes were clean. His hair was professionally cut. He looked like someone who worked in climate-controlled offices and billed by the hour. "Can I help you?" I asked. He smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Professional. Practiced. "I'm looking for Catherine Brennan." Catherine came around the side of the house pulling off her work gloves, dirt on her knees from kneeling in the garden, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. "I'm Catherine Brennan," she said. Her voice was calm, but I saw the way her shoulders tensed. The smile widened. "Catherine, good to finally meet you in person. I'm David Laughlin. I represent your cousin, Michael Brennan." She didn't move closer. "I know who you are. I wanted to speak with you directly," he said, setting the briefcase on the hood of his car. "I think there's been a misunderstanding about your father's estate." "There hasn't." He opened the briefcase, unhurried, like he had all the time in the world. "We've reviewed your father's will very carefully. You met the marriage requirement. That's legitimate. But there's a question about intent." "Intent?" Catherine repeated. The word was flat. "Yes, the will specifies that you must be married in good faith, not as a legal maneuver to circumvent the spirit of the clause." "I'm married," she said. "That's what the will required." "But your husband—" He glanced at me, assessing. "Mr. Hollis, is it? You and Mrs. Hollis don't share a bedroom from what I understand. You've been seen living separately. Neighbors have mentioned that you barely knew each other before the marriage. There are questions about whether this marriage is genuine or simply a contract designed to preserve the property." I stepped forward. "Who's asking these questions?" "My client has a vested interest in ensuring the terms of the will are honored in both letter and spirit." "Your client wants the land," I said. My client wants to ensure fairness. He pulled out a folder. I'm sure you understand, Mr. Hollis. This is a valuable property. And if the marriage is fraudulent, then Ms. Brennan, excuse me, Mrs. Hollis, would be in violation of the will's terms. Catherine's voice was steady. We're married, legally. That satisfies the requirement. Lachlan smiled again. Perhaps. But if we petition the court to review the marriage on grounds of fraud, things could get complicated. Expensive, time-consuming, legal fees, depositions, investigations into your living arrangements. He paused. I'm here to offer an alternative. Which is? Sell the land to my client, voluntarily. He'll offer you fair market value. You avoid litigation. Everyone moves forward without the stress and expense of a court battle. No, Catherine said. Think about it, Lachlan pressed, his tone softening into something that was supposed to sound reasonable. You're living with a man you barely know, pretending to be something you're not, playing house to satisfy technicality. How long can you keep this up? How long before the strain breaks you? As long as I need to. He closed the briefcase with a decisive click. You'll hear from us formally. I'd strongly advise you to consult an attorney. This could get very unpleasant. He left. The dust from his tires hung in the air long after the sound of his engine faded. Catherine stood there, watching the empty road. Her hands were still holding the garden gloves. He's going to challenge the marriage, she said quietly. Let him. He'll dig into our lives. He'll find out we don't... She stopped. Don't what? Don't sleep together. Don't act like a married couple. Don't have any history together. I looked at her, really looked at her, at the way she was holding herself together through sheer will. Do you want this land or not? Of course I do. Then we stop giving them ammunition. What does that mean? It means, I said slowly, choosing my words carefully, we start acting like people who chose each other. Not for love, maybe, but for something real. She didn't argue. She understood what was at stake. That evening, I moved some of her things into my room. Not all of them. Just enough. A sweater draped over the chair by the window. Her reading glasses on the nightstand. A book she was in the middle of. Small signs that someone else lived there, that the room belonged to two people, not one. She still slept in the guest room. But if anyone looked through the windows, if anyone came by unannounced, they'd see a shared space. We started going to town together. The hardware store, the post office, the feed supply. I'd introduce her as my wife. She didn't correct me. She'd stand close enough that it looked natural. Not touching, but together. People noticed. Of course they did. In a small town, a sudden marriage is news, especially when the people involved are middle-aged and have lived alone for years. At the diner one Saturday, Marjorie from the clerk's office came over to our booth. Sat down across from us without asking. So, she said, folding her hands on the table, how's married life? Quiet, I said. Good quiet or bad quiet? Catherine smiled slightly. Good quiet. Marjorie studied us. Her eyes were sharp, missing nothing. You two are an odd pair. Most good pairs are, I said. She didn't sound convinced. You know people are talking. People always talk, Catherine said. They're saying it's strange, how fast it happened, how you two barely knew each other. We know each other now, I said. Marjorie looked at Catherine. You doing okay? You need anything, you can tell me. I'm fine, Catherine said. Better than fine. All right then. Marjorie stood up. You take care of each other. She left, but I knew the word would spread. We were being watched, evaluated. People were trying to figure out if we were real. A week later, the formal petition arrived, delivered by certified mail. Catherine signed for it with a hand that didn't shake. She read the documents at the kitchen table. I watched her face. It didn't change expression, but I could see the effort it took to keep it steady. They're contesting the marriage, she said, claiming it's fraudulent. They're petitioning the court to invalidate it and transfer the property to Michael Brennan. I read over her shoulder. The language was aggressive, designed to intimidate. "The hearing is set for 6 weeks out," she continued. "They're going to ask us questions. Personal questions about how we met, why we married, what our relationship is like." "I know. They're going to try to prove we're lying." "Then we don't lie." She looked up at me. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said carefully, "we tell them the truth. We married for practical reasons. That doesn't make it fake. People have married for worse reasons and stayed together 50 years. You think we can win?" "I think," I said, "we have 6 weeks to figure out if this is something we both still want. And if it is, we fight for it. And if it's not, then you tell me now. Because once we walk into that courtroom, we're committed. We're telling a judge, under oath, that this marriage is real, and I won't do that unless I believe it." She set the papers down, looked at me for a long moment. "I'm committed," she said. "So am I." The hearing was held in a wood-paneled room that smelled like old paper and floor polish. Laughlin sat at one table with Michael Brennan, a man in his 40s I'd never met. Catherine and I sat at another table with an attorney we'd hired, a woman named Sarah Voss who'd handled property disputes for 30 years. The judge, a gray-haired man named Carmichael, looked tired before we even began. Laughlin presented his case. He called it a marriage of convenience, a fraudulent arrangement designed to circumvent the intent of the will. He pointed out that we'd known each other only in passing before the marriage, that we'd married within 24 hours of meeting, that we lived separately, Sarah countered. She pointed out that the will specified marriage, not love, that legal marriages don't require cohabitation, that intent is difficult to prove and irrelevant under the law. Then they called witnesses. Marjorie testified that we'd seemed serious when we filed the paperwork. A neighbor testified that he'd seen us working together on the property. The feed store owner said we shopped together, talked like people who knew each other. Then Laughlin called me. "Mr. Hollis," he said, "you married a woman you'd never spoken to privately before the day she asked you. Is that correct?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because she asked me to help her keep something that mattered." "And what did you get out of it?" "Nothing." "Nothing?" He raised an eyebrow. "You didn't negotiate compensation, access to her land, future financial benefit?" "No." "So you did this out of pure altruism?" "I did it because it was the right thing to do." He smiled. "Mr. Hollis, do you love your wife?" The room went quiet. I looked at Catherine. She was watching me, her face unreadable. "I respect her," I said. "I trust her. I believe she's a woman of integrity trying to protect something her family built. Whether that's love or not, I don't know, but it's enough for me." Laughlin turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this man just admitted he doesn't love his wife." "He admitted," Sarah cut in, "that love is complicated." "Which it is." The judge held up a hand. "I'll decide what's relevant." Then they called Catherine. Laughlin was less aggressive with her, but no less direct. "Mrs. Hollis," he said, "do you love your husband?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke. "When I asked him to marry me, I didn't love him. I didn't know him. But I knew he was a good man. I knew he'd protect what needed protecting. And over the past 2 months I've learned that he's kind, that he's fair, that he doesn't ask me to be something I'm not. I don't know if that's love, but it's more than I had in 18 years of my first marriage." Laughlin pressed. "But you're not romantically involved." "We're partners," she said, "in the way that matters. Do you intend to stay married?" She looked at me. "Yes," she said, "I do." The judge took 3 days to issue a ruling. When the call came, Catherine was outside hanging laundry. The afternoon sun was warm. The sheets moved gently in the breeze. I walked out to tell her. "The judge ruled in our favor," I said. She froze, a clothespin in her hand. "He said the marriage is legitimate. The land stays yours." She didn't cry. She didn't celebrate. She just stood there, holding the damp sheet, and let out a long breath she seemed to have been holding for months. "It's over," she said. "It is." She finished hanging the sheet, smoothed out the wrinkles with her hands. Then she turned to me. "What happens now?" "What do you mean?" "The agreement was that I'd stay until you trusted me. Do you?" "I do. So I can leave." I looked at her, at the woman who'd walked into my life 2 months ago with an impossible request, who'd lived in my house, worked beside me, faced down lawyers and judges without breaking. "If you want to," I said. "Do you want me to?" I thought about the house without her in it, the kitchen in the morning, silent, the porch in the evening, empty, the small routines we'd built without trying, the way she'd reorganized the pantry, the way the mare stood still for her, the way we'd learned to share space without needing to fill it with words. "No," I said. "I don't." "Then I'll stay." We stood there in the yard, the wind moving through the clothesline, and I realized we'd both made a choice that had nothing to do with judges or lawyers or land. We'd chosen each other, not because we had to, because we wanted to. That evening, we drove out to her family's land. She wanted to see it, to walk the property, to make sure it was still whole. The drive took 20 minutes. The road turned from pavement to gravel to dirt. We passed through woods, then open fields. When we crested the rise, I saw the house. It sat exactly as she'd described. White clapboard, 2 stories. A porch that wrapped around 3 sides. The kind of house that had been built to last, by people who believed in permanence. We got out of the truck. Catherine stood there for a moment, just looking. "This is it," she said. "It's beautiful." "It will be again," she said, "once I can take care of it properly." We walked the property. She showed me the creek where her father had taught her to fish, the stone wall her great-grandfather had built, the cemetery under the hickory trees, just 4 headstones, weathered but standing. She knelt by her mother's grave, brushed away some fallen leaves. "Thank you, Mama," she whispered. We walked through the woods. The light was fading, filtering golden through the trees. She pointed out landmarks, the old lightning-struck oak, the bend in the creek where the water ran deepest, the field that would be full of wildflowers come spring. "I want to bring it back," she said. "The way it was when my father kept it, before I let everything go." "We," I said. She looked at me. "We can bring it back," I repeated, "if you want help." "You'd do that?" "I would." She smiled. It was the first real smile I'd seen from her. Not polite, not careful, just genuine. "Then yes," she said. "I'd like that." We stood there as the sun set. 2 people who'd married as strangers and become something else. Not a love story, not exactly, but something real. Something earned through patience and trust and the willingness to believe in each other when no one else did. When we drove back to my place, our place now, the house looked different to me. Not smaller, just more complete, like it had been waiting for both of us all along. That night, Catherine moved her things from the guest room into the bedroom we'd been pretending to share. Not because anyone was watching, not because we had to, because we wanted to. She stood in the doorway, holding a stack of folded clothes. "Is this all right?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "It is." She put her things in the dresser, hung her sweater in the closet, set her book on the nightstand. We didn't talk about what it meant. We didn't need to. Some things are understood without being said. 3 months later, on a Saturday morning, I woke to find Catherine already up. I followed the smell of coffee to the kitchen. She was standing at the window, looking out at the property. The sun was just coming up, painting everything gold. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. She turned. "I was thinking about my daughter. I called her yesterday." "How'd that go?" "Better than I expected. I told her about us, about the land, about everything." "What did she say?" She said she's proud of me, for standing up for myself, for not giving up. Catherine's eyes were bright. She's coming to visit next month. She wants to meet you. I'd like that. She poured me a cup of coffee, handed it to me. You know, she said, when I showed up at your door, I was looking for a signature, a legal formality. I never expected to find a home. Neither did I said. She stepped closer, put her hand on my arm. Thank you, she said, for saying yes, for giving me a chance, for seeing me. I covered her hand with mine. Thank you, I said, for asking. We stood there in the morning light, drinking our coffee, planning the day ahead. What fence posts needed replacing. What supplies we'd need from town. Whether we should start clearing the overgrown garden at her family's place. Ordinary things. Beautiful things. The kind of things that make a life. Outside, the horses were moving across the pasture. The cattle were grazing. The world was waking up. And inside, two people who'd found each other in the most unexpected way were building something that would last. Not because a will required it, not because a judge approved it, but because they'd chosen it. Together. Sometimes the most important choices we make aren't the ones that look like love at first. They're the ones we honor long enough to see what they become. If this story stirred something in you about second beginnings, or quiet commitments, leave a comment. I'd like to know what it reminded you of. God bless you.